1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
The Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance.
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Rebellion.
Rebellion is built on hope.
And redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Star Wars Reactions. We have a packed show today. It is going to be a blast. We are going to be discussing and reviewing Chapter 16 of The Mandalorian, The Rescue, the season finale, and it is just so full of goodness and so full of fun. It's going to be a great discussion. So let's not hold anything back. Let's get this show on the road. My name is Aaron Harris, and joining me is my co-host, the David Motters. David, how you doing?
I am doing excellent. And
guess what, buddy? We got a guest.
Oh, no.
Yes, guess who just walked into my studio?
Who?
The Robert Marcano.
Hello, Star Wars Reactions.
What's up, buddy?
Oh my gosh.
You have to edit that out.
No, I'll probably just leave it in.
All right, sounds good. That sounds good. David, I said hi.
Says hi. Oh, Lord. Yeah, his daughter's here playing with my daughter, so.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So, all right. So, that was fun. So, it's not every day we get a guest. We're just walking into the studio.
Yeah, no, we need him on. We definitely need him on for an episode.
We should. We'll have to do that after once we come back after New Year's.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I'll play right off of that. No, I'm ready to react. You know that. I mean, obviously, the ultimate episode here. I'm ready to cover it and look forward to covering it with you. And it's exciting to be at this point, Chapter 16 of The Mandalorian.
Oh, it is exciting indeed. This was a fun-filled episode, packed with a lot of goodness and a lot of surprises. And we will discuss those surprises in detail. And because I know if you were anything like me, you did not stand for the last 10 minutes of the episode. Or you did not sit, excuse me. Because I stood the whole the last 10 minutes of the episode, 10, 15 minutes. It was awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Before we go into all of that, though, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the news that has happened since we were here last. Of course, you know, it seems like we just had a discussion about losing a member of the Star Wars family with the original Darth Vader himself.
Yeah,
passed away, David Prowse. And unfortunately, we lost another this past week. December 17th, we lost the original Boba Fett, the Jeremy Bulloch. He passed away. And, you know, we've lost a lot of Star Wars characters. And this is the first one that I had the privilege of meeting that has passed away. So this one was a little bit more personal for me overall, because I met Jeremy at Star Wars Weekends. And he was just an all-around fantastic guy. Very, very nice, very talkative, very friendly. He loved being out amongst fans. So it was very much a gut punch when I got this news that Jeremy Bulloch had passed. I was pretty sad about that. You had met Jeremy at Star Wars Weekends too, hadn't you, David?
I had, yeah. You know, and when you and I texted about it, I got to meet him in June of 2015, the last year that there was Star Wars Weekends, and got some great pictures of my kids with him. shook hands with him, talked with him. He talked about his 10 grandchildren, and I saw that Steve Sansweet put out a really nice tweet about Jeremy Bulloch, his wife, his kids, and then of course his 10 grandkids. And I remember then he said he was getting a little tired there in 2015 of doing that. He did a lot of conventions. So I felt very fortunate to meet him, and I can echo everything you said, that he was a very, very nice guy. Talked with my kids, talked with me, took time with us, and just a wonderful guy to talk to.
Truly was. A lot of people, anybody who knew him, just want to say from us to thoughts and prayers are with his family this time. It's never easy to lose someone, but to lose someone right before the holidays is even more difficult. So our thoughts and our prayers go out to the family of Jeremy Bulloch. All right, so we move on to some better news, more upbeat news. We did have the season finale of I almost said Rebels, but of Mandalorian. So we also got our final Mando Monday this week as well, and we had some interesting reveals. I mean, there were 3 right off the bat that I'm like, man, I wish I had an extra $600 just lying around. I'd say Hasbro really killed it this week, man. They really killed it. They announced a new vintage collection, Slave One, which they're releasing for the 3 3/4 inch line. Very cool, very nice. They announced the Boba Fett helmet, the Black Series Boba Fett helmet, but this is the new updated one with the new paint job from that Boba gave it after he got the back, that matte, nice bright matte green finish now.
Yeah.
So that looks awesome. But the one that really grabbed my attention is the Black Series Force FX Elite Lightsaber, and it's the Dark Saber.
Yeah.
That thing was gorgeous.
Yeah. I can't imagine people doing all 8 Mando Mondays and getting all of this. You'd be broke.
Oh, I know. I was actually talking to my boss at work this past week about it, and he's like, "These Mando Mondays are killing me." He goes, "I know they're saving the best for last, and my wife's already told me if I buy something else, she's divorcing me."
Yeah. End of the marriage. I know.
So I haven't talked to him yet since those announcements today. So I will see, or yesterday, because we're recording this on Tuesday. So I expect to hear some interesting details tomorrow when I talk to him and find out what he ordered.
Well, if he asks you, Aaron, do you have an extra room for a while? You'll know he got booted.
I know. Which I won't, because my sister's arriving for the holidays. So,
oh gosh.
So my extra room will already be taken.
Oh gosh.
Oh, but yeah. So check out those Mando Monday deals. Those are awesome. They're on pre-order. A lot of them don't come out till later in the year. So, but you want to pre-order them while you can. I seriously considered that Dark Saber, man. That would just have been incredible to own.
Yeah.
But I was good. I'm a good boy. I am.
Yeah. I honestly, it's interesting. I got a coffee mug with the child on it the other day. A client of mine brought it in as a Christmas gift last week, and I put it up in my office, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. I got that, and I have a little koozie with the child on it. So I have a coffee cup and a koozie, and that's it. And my marriage is still together. So there we go.
Very cool. Very good. That's a good thing. So I got the child scattered all over the place here right now. So, it's, I got to be careful.
Yeah, no, I want more. I'd want more child stuff, but it's just I've tried to be good. Held off on the Razor Crest. Just I heard a lot of people say they wanted it. I did too. You did. It's just an issue of where do you put it. I don't know where I would put it. I don't have room here at the house. I don't have room at my office where I have a lot of Star Wars stuff. So there's things like that. I've hit critical mass. I really have, unfortunately. But until my kids move out and I get a Star Wars room, that's maybe when I can pick it back up and kind of pick and choose some cool stuff and go from there. But right now I'm trying to be good.
I understand because I'm doing the same. So, that's going on. Let us know if you pre-ordered any of that stuff because we'd love to see pictures of it once you get it. Now, more news going on. They did announce with the ending of season 2 of The Mandalorian that on Christmas Day, they will be releasing season 2 of Disney Gallery The Mandalorian, the behind-the-scenes special that explores the making of the Mandalorian. So looking forward to that. That's going to be absolutely awesome. I know season 1 where they went through and explored how they made the episodes and the technology and the creative processes and everything was just phenomenal. We covered that all the way up until Mando started, season 2 started. So this is a blessing right here. I'm excited to see where this goes and see what happens there. So the last bit of news is huge news and it was announced in the most precarious sort of ways.
Yeah.
If you watched chapter 16 of The Mandalorian, The Rescue, and you did not stay through the end of the credits, you missed a major announcement. That announcement, well, hold on. If you haven't watched it, pause the show right now and go watch it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil it for you because I'm about to if you haven't watched it. So this is your chance. No spoilers. Just pause it, watch it. You good? All right, let's go. The Book of Boba Fett is coming, y'all. That's right. We are getting a series called The Book of Boba Fett. It is premiering December of 2021, set during the time of the Mandalorian series. So it's going to be interweaving, I guess, timeline-wise with this show. I am so excited about that. Mainly because it is not something I anticipated. It was an announcement made during Investor Day. They sat on this until this episode, which blows my mind that they were able to keep it under wraps like that.
Yeah.
And of course the whole thing happens where after the credits, it cuts to Tatooine, to Jabba's palace. And it goes into Jabba's palace, Carabast. And inside the palace on Jabba's throne is Bib Fortuna. So he survived. He survived Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And apparently took over the cartel. So.
Yeah.
Very interesting at that. So we hear gunfire, kind of reminiscent of, Return of the Jedi. Guards start running, you see bodies falling, and next thing you know, in walks Fennec Shan.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, in walks Boba Fett. And Bib Fortuna's like, "Oh, Boba, we thought you were dead. Oh my gosh, so good to see you alive. We thought you were dead." Then Boba just shoots him.
Yeah.
Then walks up and takes a seat on Jabba's throne. And that's the end of the teaser. And Fennec Shan walks up, puts her gun down, grabs a drink, and sits on the arm of the chair next to him. But that's where it ends. That's where this teaser ends. This announcement ends. And it just pops up, the logo, the Book of Boba, December 2021.
Yeah, and once again, we're excited, but then we're like, no, we have to wait a year.
Oh, my goodness, yes. And to imagine that, and apparently this show is already in production. So not only did they keep this announcement hush, they've kept the production on the down low.
Yes.
That blows my mind. You can't keep productions like that on the down low. Everybody knows when your production's going, but to not have people know that you're in production, they can know. Everybody always knows when production is going on, but they never know what they cannot know the content. But for them to have a production going on and nobody know what's happening, come on, wow.
Yeah.
Kudos to Lucasfilm.
Yeah, they've been able to lock stuff down a little bit better, or a lot better. I mean, we'll get to it later in this episode. Mark Hamill said the same thing about his involvement with this chapter 16. He says he can't believe it. The spoilers didn't come out about it for over a year.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that they are able to lock certain things down and not allow that information to leak. There's always a leak, some kind of leak or some kind of rumor. And there's been a rumor of a Boba Fett show for years. But this is for it to be in production and for them to add this in at the end of the Mandalorian episode. I was blown away.
No, it's awesome, and I'm happy for Tim Morrison and Ming-Na Wen, and to see what she has to do with it. Of course, we're going to see more of her in The Bad Batch. We know that from the Silver Reel, and so she's really coming to the forefront as a key character. And this looks like a lot of fun with Boba Fett there in Jabba's palace. Now it's Boba's palace. This will be interesting. A lot of underworld, and it'll be fun to see this intertwine with the Mandalorian. I'm sure there might be some team ups in season 3, perhaps season 4 if they do the 4 seasons, right, of Mandalorian that Giancarlo Esposito has talked about. So there's a lot of rich different storylines that they could develop there. This is just Dave Filoni and Favreau just playing in the kids in the candy store. This is too much fun for them.
Absolutely. It is definitely an adventure, and I cannot wait till Christmas. I know a lot of people online are excited for this. So yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. So, all right. So with that, we pretty much wrap up all of our news. That takes care of everything there. So let's go ahead and take a look and get things going on Chapter 16, The Rescue, the series finale of The Mandalorian. Of course, this episode was released December 18th, 2020, written by Jon Favreau and directed by Peyton Reed. Now, Peyton Reed also directed an episode earlier this season. Oh my gosh, I just blanked on the episode name. It was the one with the spiders.
The Passenger.
The Passenger, that's right. The Passenger. He directed that episode. And when I heard he was also directing this episode, I was a little surprised. The Passenger I felt was a good episode, but it was a little lacking. So I was a little surprised they were using him again for the season finale. And but man, he blew my mind. He did great. It was almost like he threw us a mediocre episode so he could blow us away at the end, so the expectations wouldn't be so high. I don't know, man. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, I thought we'd see Favreau direct this. I thought it might be him. I thought Bryce Dallas Howard. I even thought Taika Waititi. But I don't know that. I don't know that they gave the list of directors this year like we kind of knew last year. It seemed like. No, he did outstanding. So tons of credit to him.
Yeah, well, they did give a list of directors, but they didn't say who was directing what. So we knew it was somebody who had already directed it that was going to direct the final episode, because of the list, everybody had already directed. So it was just a matter of who was it, and I honestly assumed it would be Favreau. But man, Peyton Reed, and of course, if you don't know Peyton Reed, Ant-Man and Wasp movies for Marvel, phenomenal, great movies, very comedic, a lot of fun. And he knocked it out of the park with this episode. So let's go ahead and take a look here at the episode itself. David, you want to run through the synopsis?
Yeah, I can run through it.
Yep.
In this season finale, we begin with the Slave One in hot pursuit of a Lambda-class shuttle, and we find that it's carrying Dr. Pershing, none other than Dr. Pershing. It was pretty neat to see Boba Fett disable the shuttle, and this allows Mando and Cara Dune to capture Dr. Pershing. Next, we see Mando and Boba track down Bo-Katan and Casca Reeves on an unknown planet. They don't tell us the name, but I'm sure they will in some upcoming, maybe that visual guide that Pablo Hidalgo is working on right now. But after some awesome fisticuffs between Boba and Casca Reeves, Bo-Katan agrees to help track down the child because it involves getting them off Gideon and the Darksaber. So she's interested there. Interestingly, while our heroes plan out an attack strategy, Dr. Pershing offers quite a bit of help. He's pretty readily helpful to them on how to get to the child. Their attack plan goes into action with the Lambda shuttle being followed by Slave One, and they come out of hyperspace right by Moff Gideon's light cruiser. Boba uses his ship to make it look like he's attacking it. Bo-Katan and Casca, they land the shuttle right in Gideon's light cruiser while Boba shoots away in hyperspace. Then we get to see these four powerful female characters blast their way through stormtroopers all the way to the bridge. That's Bo-Katan, Casca Reeves, Cara Dune, and Fennec Shan. I mean, they kick some butt. And, we can go into a lot more detail about all that, but again, we're just doing a summary here. But it was kind of neat. After they're clearing the way, Mando is moving quietly towards the brig where the child is being held. He does have to battle a single dark trooper. He finds Gideon after that with the Darksaber drawn along with the child. And we see them have, some discussion. And ultimately Gideon says, no, you can take the child, but he viciously attacks Mando with a Darksaber. Fortunately, Mando has armor made of pure Beskar. And then he can use that Beskar saber, that Beskar staff we saw him get in the episode with Ahsoka Tano several episodes back. He uses that to defeat Gideon. It's interesting, as Mando comes into the bridge, this is where our other heroes are, Fennec Shan and Bo-Katan and Casca Reeves and so on. He comes in with Gideon, with the child in tow, and also the Darksaber, and you can start to see Bo-Katan's face, and she literally asks, "What is happening?" And so Gideon is deliciously evil, and just starts sowing the seeds of disruption between Mando and Bo-Katan. Mando doesn't want anything to do with it. He's just telling her to take the Darksaber, but per the history, she just can't have it. She can't just take it. She has to defeat him in battle. Interestingly, right when that's about to get heated, there's an alarm that sounds, and it's the return of the Dark Troopers that had gotten sucked out into space out of the airlock. Mando had sent them out of the airlock a little bit earlier in the episode. As it looks like it's the end of our heroes, the Dark Troopers are about to break into the bridge, another alarm sounds. And this time we see an X-Wing land on the light cruiser. And the next thing we see, unbelievable, is we see a Jedi cutting through the Dark Troopers like a hot knife through butter. Interestingly, we see Grogu respond to one of the screens, and Mando's watching him. And that leads Mando to tell the rest of his team that it's okay to open the blast doors because this Jedi has cut through all of the Darksabers. When the Jedi walks in and reveals himself, it's none other than Luke Skywalker. He heard Grogu's call, and not only is it Luke, but R2's with Luke. And the end of the episode is incredibly touching with Luke and Mando talking to each other. Mando gives Grogu permission to go with Luke. And in a touching scene, Grogu wants to see and touch Mando's face. And Mando does remove his helmet for the second episode in a row. And in tears, he says goodbye to Grogu, promising that they'll meet again. And the last clip we see is Luke and Grogu and R2 leaving to get on the X-Wing and leave the light cruiser. And that ended chapter 16.
Very good. Very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with our initial thoughts and our continuation of the breakdown of the rescue. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here. We are discussing Chapter 16 of The Mandalorian, The Rescue, the season finale of Season 2. And what a tremendous episode it was. David just finished giving us the synopsis of the episode. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off with our opening thoughts. For me, the episode, I'll go ahead and start since David just did the synopsis. My initial thoughts when I watched this was a great episode, hands down. I sat there, I watched it, I was enjoying it. It was good. It was exciting. I was having fun. And then when we got to the end, when Luke Skywalker showed up, I literally lost my mind. I went from sitting on the couch watching it, and then there's that when the X-Wing shows up, I'm like, okay, cool. It's going to be the New Republic showing up, and it's going to be, that was probably like Trapper Wolf and the other guy. And this is going to be fun. Cool. All right. It's good. It's going to be good to see Dave Filoni again. And then all of a sudden it's the single X-Wing. I'm like, okay, well, that's weird. And then there's that one angle shot of it coming in the launch tube, and you see it and you get a good look at that X-Wing, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh dear Lord, that's Red 5. And at that point, I went from sitting on the couch to standing less than like 3 feet away from my TV. And I'm going, it's Red 5. It's Red 5. Then I was starting to freak out. I'm like, oh Lord, they recast Luke. And I was freaking out thinking they had recast Luke Skywalker. I'm like, how could they have recasted Luke? This is dangerous grounds we're treading in if they're recasting Luke and not making any kind of, laying any kind of groundwork for this. This could turn around and bite them in the tail. I can't believe they recast Luke. And of course, then we see all the fighting in the hallways and the shrouded Jedi slicing everybody up, the green lightsaber. We get a glimpse of the gloved hand, and it's just confirming it's Luke Skywalker. And when we finally get to the bridge and he takes that hood off, and it was Mark Hamill, I about lost my ever-loving mind. I was like, they didn't cast it. They didn't recast it. They didn't recast it. Then I'm like, okay, how'd they do this? Okay, this looks... Then I started rolling through all the clips of Leia in Rogue One and what they did with Vincent Price for Rogue One and for Tarkin. And I'm like, okay, that's exactly what they did. They did the face graft thing on somebody for Luke. I'm like, this is actually pretty cool. And to me, it looks like they gave him kind of like a 5 o'clock shadow where he's starting to try to grow his Jedi Master beard. But I'm like, this was pretty cool. I lost it. I loved it. And then when we got the Boba clip after the credits, oh God, this was great. I loved it. David, what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of you. I've got my show notes here. I mean, I'm going to go off script pretty fast, but I was thinking about this, because when we put the notes together, I'm sitting here saying, well, what do I say? What can I say? And what words do you use to describe this episode? And then ultimately I'm like, well, yeah, none can do it justice. And then I thought, well, maybe the best thing I can say, when I record with Aaron is that this is hands down my favorite episode of all 16 chapters last year and this year. It's just, maybe that's the best way to say it. It's just incredible. I wrote this down and I wanted to share this with listeners because I thought about this. Now we're in January of 2020, but we're in December of 2020, but back in January of 2020, back at the beginning of this year, The Rise of Skywalker was still in theaters. And I remember being there. Of course, I went with Aaron and Jason to the premiere last December of 19. But then in January, I went one more time in the theater, and I'm watching, and I see Harrison Ford as Han Solo. I see Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. And Chewie's there. I know it's not Peter Mayhew, but there's Chewie, one of my heroes. R2 is on the screen. Again, I know we don't have Kenny Baker anymore. But here are my heroes, many people's heroes, that I first watched 43 years ago on the big screen. And to be in January of 2020 and to see my heroes up on the screen, I thought, how many people can say that about their heroes? How many, it's almost a 50-year span, and there they are. And I remember sitting in the theater back in January of this year and just feeling like I am so fortunate to be able to still see these individuals. And then now you're here in December at the end of 2020, and I get to see Luke Skywalker 5 years after Return of the Jedi, like Luke in his prime. And it's Mark Hamill, right? He gets an acting credit in this. And I just was telling myself, are you kidding me? This is, and then I would just say this, how incredibly fortunate we all are to enjoy one of the greatest heroes of all time. And, just to say something to piggyback off Aaron when he was talking about seeing the gloved hand, the green lightsaber, even seeing Luke's belt buckle, on one of the screens, right, as Grogu's looking. What I noticed, and I listened again the second and third times I've watched this episode, they don't play Luke's theme, right? They don't do that. They only do it at the very end, right? I think when he reveals his face. And you know what I thought, Aaron? Like when you were talking about, oh my gosh, they recast him. What did they do? A lot of people were talking about Sebastian Stan. So I thought when they flipped the hood up, it might be him as Luke. But when Luke pulls his hood off and it's Luke, I loved it. And again, I think I felt the way a lot of people did. Like the guts that Lucasfilm had to do Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One. And even you said it too, Aaron, that little clip of Leia at the end of Rogue One. That's they're gutsy to do that because the human eye picks this stuff up. Did it look perfect? No. But boy, did it look good. And that's weird because the second and third time I watched it, it actually looked better. I thought it wouldn't look as good, but I was like, I like this. And I don't know how they did the voice. If that was Mark Hamill, if it's a computer program, I know they've got computer programs to do that now, but just blown away. And again, my favorite episode of all 16 chapters so far.
I can't say I blame you. Yeah, and thank you for correcting me. That it was Cushing, not Vincent Price.
Well, they, of course, I know why you said it, because they work together so often, those Hammer horror films.
Yes, they did. I don't know why I said Vincent Price.
Yeah. Well, that's where you and I help each other out, buddy.
Oh, that is why. Awesome. But yeah, no, well said. I mean, this was just an all around, just a great episode. It was so much fun and so much great stuff in it. So let's just get right down to it. It opens up with them stealing the ship, the Lambda class shuttle, which I thought was great to see a Lambda class shuttle. And they hit it with some ion cannons and they board it. And the whole time they're stealing this Lambda class shuttle, the only thing I could think of was Kanan Jarrus from Rebels. How do they let us keep stealing these things?
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're making me laugh. I'm choking.
First thing that popped into my head when I saw them stealing this Lambda class shuttle, and I realized that's what they were doing, was Kanan standing there going, "How do they let us keep stealing these things?" It has to be one of the most dangerous jobs in the Imperial fleet. No, it's not a stormtrooper. It's flying a Lambda class shuttle because somebody's going to steal it.
That, Dave Filoni told Favreau, listen, I know you're writing this episode. Just have it be a Lambda class shuttle. Everyone who's watched Rebels and loved Kanan Jarrus will get this.
Oh my gosh. I thought that was the greatest thing. I loved it. I mean, it was great. And I loved how they set it up from there where they went flying in, blasters going, being chased by Slave One, and made it look like they were in distress. That way they could, as quickly as possible, get on board the cruiser. And I tell you, they've done a great job with Slave One.
Oh,
putting her in action scenes, taking on those TIE fighters was just awesome.
Oh, everything Aaron just said and more.
And it was great. And then of course he cuts tail once he knows they're going to be safely on board the cruiser. He cuts tail and does what he's supposed to. He cuts tail and run. He backs off, takes out a TIE fighter, and jumps into hyperspace.
Oh, sweet.
Awesome. Loved it. And then we, of course, have the boarding party on board the cruiser. And, of course, this was just a traditional, split up. Let's split up. Y'all head for the bridge. I'm going to go take out the dark troopers and go get the kid. Essentially is what it was.
That's right.
And I thought it was very cool and very interesting that Mando had the spear with him, the Beskar spear with him. Because normally that's not something he carried around with him, but since he no longer has a ship, I guess he's just carrying all his personal possessions with him everywhere he goes, and I guess that would include this spear.
Yeah. Well, we remember when Boba Fett and Fennec Shan are looking at him there in the wreckage of the Razor Crest. He picks up that Beskar spear and the little ball that Grogu loves to play with. So those are the only two things he's had to put on him. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's carrying them with him wherever he goes. So now let's talk about these dark troopers, because I like how they involved them in the story. They did manage to activate before he could shut them down and destroy them, but I like the fight that ensued. I love how one slipped through the door and he had to fight him. The Mandalorian, Din Djarin, had to fight him one-on-one, and that was a pretty wicked fight.
Oh my God.
It was pretty rough. It was incredible to see how that worked out. And using the spear, the blaster's not doing anything. I mean, they just really were struggling to get in this fight. I thought it was great. And the whole meantime, the rest of the dark troopers are kind of trying to pound through the door.
Well, I didn't really see it coming I guess you get so enthralled, but by showing how difficult it was for Mando to deal with one of them, and then to contrast that with what Luke does and how powerful he is as a Jedi Master, it really contrasts so well. I really love how Favreau wrote that and set that up, and when his Beskar helmet is getting punched by that dark trooper, you're like, holy mackerel, incredible. And again, like you said, to come back around, I was so thankful he had that spear because he was able to go up underneath the mask into the neck area there. But flamethrower, singing birds did not do anything. His blaster didn't. But that Beskar spear saved the day for him there, or that could have been worse, man. Holy crow.
Exactly. And the fact that once he got killed the one, he goes and he blows the cargo bay door and sucks the rest of them all out into space. I'm like, okay, cool.
Right.
We're good. And I'm like, okay, honestly, if I would have sat there and really thought about what I was watching, I'd have been like, okay, they're coming back. Because hindsight 2020, I should have realized they were coming back. Because they're droids. I mean, they set that up in the last episode. Oh no, they're droids now. Or no, it was earlier in this episode. Pershing tells them that they're droids. They're not. There's no humans in them anymore. They're just full-fledged droids. So of course they're going to survive in the vacuum of space.
Absolutely.
So I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier when they showed back up, but they did so well.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we haven't talked about, of course, is the return in this episode of Bo-Katan. She before they take the cruiser, Boba Fett and Mando go to a planet, to a bar, and they go in and they find Bo-Katan, and of course her friend, and try to convince them to join the cause, because he basically is persuading her by saying, hey, look, we're going after Gideon. You want his sword? Let's go.
Yeah.
And, I found it kind of strange as much, and I think a lot of this shows the growth of the character of Bo-Katan, because normally from when we saw her in Rebels and when we saw her in Clone Wars, if she knows where the fight is, she's running into it full force. I mean, he's sitting there telling him, we know where he is. And Bo-Katan's like, yeah, no, you're not going to see the kid alive again. It's over. Don't worry about it. Yeah. She's almost trying to talk herself out of the fight. And of course, that to me, that kind of was impressive, because that's not the Bo-Katan that we saw in Rebels or we saw in the Clone Wars, who was all gung-ho, fight. She was very, I want to say, especially when she had to break up the fight between Boba and the Sasha Banks character, she had to put her foot down, and she was very, I don't want to say regal, because that's not the word I'm looking for, but she was very much in charge, and you could tell the leadership had matured her, and from my point of view. Mm-hmm. What did you think of Bo-Katan overall, especially in that particular scene?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought her up. I know that, when we do these, you'll, pick different subjects for us to hit on. And I'm glad you brought this up, because with her, I do think it is leadership, like you said, and she is in control. She tells Casca to stand down twice, and she really talks about how she wishes all that effort would have been shown against the Empire. I also saw this, and I'd be curious to see what you think, Aaron. I almost, as she's sitting there and looks up at Mando and at Boba Fett, almost like a weariness of war, which would tie in with what you said in terms of not just immediately wanting to jump into this stuff. And we've seen her battle a lot. She's been in the thick of it. Oh my gosh, I can visualize the episodes of Clone Wars and Rebels, and all she's known is war, and oh my gosh. And so I felt like there was a weariness, like I said, like you said, not necessarily a regalness, but an in charge aspect, but also a weariness and almost a frustration in her, of just being tired of this. Obviously, we see her perk up when Mando says, "Hey, not only do they have a child, but we have the coordinates to Moff Gideon and the Darksaber." So, so I definitely saw a weariness too. Did you see that?
Yeah, I definitely saw that. And there is, she just, all I could think of is, and I always go back to Rebels. I always do. Mainly because I love Rebels, but I go back to Thrawn when he's talking to Hera. And it talks, and it fits perfectly for Bo-Katan is when when Thrawn is talking to Hera and he's like, war, it's all you've known. That is Bo-Katan. When she was old enough, she got her armor. She joined Death Watch. She fought with Death Watch. Then she fought against the Separatists. Then she fought against Maul's Separatists. Then she fought against the Empire, and now she's still fighting the Empire, and she doesn't have a planet. So yeah, absolutely, she is weary. She is tired. You can't help but be tired if you're in that situation, especially if you were the leader and and you feel responsible for the loss of your world.
Well, yeah, and when Boba Fett says, "Mandalore, are you kidding me? That place was turned to glass by the Empire," and you saw how frustrated she was because she's like, "Look, you can say that, Boba Fett, but I've been battling for this planet for forever, and I'm not giving up yet." And I get why it got her ire up. She still wants, to be in charge of Mandalore and to have it be something better than it's been.
Absolutely, and I applaud. That's awesome for her to do. I definitely applaud that. Now, keeping on the Bo-Katan subject, because we see her make another decision later in the episode. And of course, at the end, we know they have before Skywalker shows up, they have Gideon in custody. They are. Or Mando has Gideon in custody. He has the Darksaber, and he goes and he tries to give it to Bo-Katan. And basically, Gideon's like, she can't take it because she didn't win it in combat. So she refused to take it. She can only take it through as winning it in combat. And of course, we go back to how she originally got the Darksaber. And I've seen this online all weekend since this episode aired, and it was something I was questioning after the episode went off too, because it was, it's a very, if you're familiar with Rebels, you recognize this issue, which is the fact that she didn't win the Darksaber in combat. Sabine Wren found the Darksaber on. Oh gosh, what's the planet?
Well, would it have been
the Night Sister planet?
Oh yes, on Dathomir.
Dathomir, yeah, she found it in Dathomir in Maul's quarter area in his bedroom. She took it, and that's how they got a hold of it. And next thing we know, she's training with it, trying to win it, and she's trying to lead Mandalore to free Mandalore from the Empire and free her father. And then she realizes, you know what? I'm not the leader they need. Bo-Katan is the leader they need, and she gives it to Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan didn't win it. She didn't. Sabine didn't win it. They just passed it along. So for her to say that she can't accept it back has me really scratching my head as to how did she lose it? That she won't he won't just accept it back willingly. Did she lose it? And this is where we need some background on Bo, which I hope we get at some point, whether it's in a book or whether it's in a series or something, because how did she lose that saber? How did she lose the dark saber? Right. And how did Gideon get it? Did she lose it to Gideon? Yeah. Did Gideon somehow defeat her in combat and take it from her? Did an Inquisitor beat her in combat and take it from her? I mean, and give it to Gideon? I mean, there's just too many questions as to why she won't accept it. And the only, and like I said, the only thing I can justify in my head is somehow when she lost it initially, it was through combat, and that's why she won't take it back unless she wins it back in combat. What were your thoughts on that, David?
Yeah, because as you brought this up again, I'm so glad you did. In that Rebels episode, I heard someone commenting on this, that I'm trying to visualize it. I should have gone back and watched the episode before recording, but I remember seeing Sabine hand the Darksaber to Bo-Katan, but I wondered if the whole thing was that it's in front of all the clans, and it was universally accepted that she would lead all of those clans and lead Mandalore. And so I do remember that episode of Rebels and loving it. Like you said, I think Dave Filoni has got, answers a few questions, creates 10 more. And so this is what us Star Wars fans love. And I absolutely do think we'll get more answers to that, because they left that. They didn't, episode ends when, cut to Luke Skywalker leaving with Grogu. That's the end. And, or I guess I should say Iris out. But I definitely think they're going to cover that backstory on how he got it. Because listen, at the end of season 1, all of us were asking the questions: how did he get that that Darksaber?
Oh, absolutely. And it's something that we're going to continue to ask until we actually find out. It'll be interesting to finally get that information once we get it. So yeah, I like that. So, all right. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back and we'll continue discussing more of The Rescue. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here. We are discussing The Rescue. Continuing on here. This was just such a good episode. Let's keep it going. Let's talk about the fight to the bridge, and which I absolutely loved. Mando goes his own way to find the child, and then we have everybody else fighting their way to the bridge. We have Fennec Shand, we have Cara Dune, we have Bo-Katan, and I really wish I could remember Sasha Banks' character's name.
Oh, Casca Reeves.
Casca Reeves. There we go. Casca. So Casca, we have these 4 incredible females fighting their way to the bridge. And probably, I got to say, one of my favorite scenes is Fennec and Cara walking across the bridge, and all of a sudden a squad of stormtroopers run up behind them and basically are telling them to drop their weapons, and they turn around because they're, of course, surprised and caught off guard. And then all of a sudden you see Casca and Bo-Katan fly up from underneath the bridge and just kill them all. Catch them in a crossfire. Loved that scene. But these characters are just powerful characters, and I love, and they really kick some butt, major butt, man. I love it. What are your thoughts on these 4 and their battle to the bridge?
Oh yeah, loved it. I want to see more, and that's why I think I'd love to see Cara Dune continue on, and either Mandalorian or Rangers of the New Republic, whatever. I want to see her. Obviously, as you talked at the beginning of this episode, in our news section, we talked about Fennec Shand there at the end with Boba Fett in Jabba's palace, and so we know that we're going to see more Fennec Shand. But I want to see more of all of them. I do want to see more of Bo-Katan and Casca Reeves, and we're going to. There's no question, because obviously they left that thread open. This dark saber thread has continued from the end of season 1 to the end of season 2, and so I loved it. And just a side note. Not just in this episode, but all, like, Aaron and I had covered the tragedy a couple of weeks ago, where tons of stormtroopers got pummeled by Boba Fett, Fennec Shan, and the Mandalorian. I'll say this: whoever these stunt men and women are in these stormtrooper outfits, I watch them fall. Just like Aaron was mentioning, when you see Casca Reeves and Bo-Katan fly up from either side and start shooting them, and these guys fall, they get hit. This whole trip that Aaron mentioned, from them going from the shuttle to the bridge, I watched, again, these stunt people inside of these stormtrooper costumes, and they can't be that comfortable. You're just talking, plastoid, look, plastic, and I see how they fall sometimes, and it looks like it hurts. So just a shout out to all of the stunt doubles this entire year. They have got to be nursing their wounds from getting their butts kicked all season long.
They must be. They definitely have to be. So yes, hats off to them. All right, so I think it's time we talk about the monkey in the room when it comes to this episode. And that, of course, is the arrival of the face of Star Wars. He has been simply that. He's been the face of Star Wars since 1977. Mark Hamill returning to the role of Luke Skywalker. And it was Hamill doing the voice.
Oh, okay.
It was Hamill doing the voice. Okay. The pure shock of that, and like you mentioned in your opening statements, the fact that they kept it quiet. I mean, Mark Hamill said he sat on this for a year and it didn't leak out. He goes, it was hard to sit on this for a year. But man, this was a scene, when they, all right, let me preface this by saying this. When they started talking about a Jedi coming and finding Grogu in the previous episode, not the last one, the one before, when they went there and the discussions started about, okay, what Jedi will come find Grogu? And people were talking, it's going to be Ezra Bridger. No, Ahsoka's going to come back just to see if he really connects with the Force, and so on and so forth. It's going to be Cal Kestis from the Fallen Jedi games. So there was a lot of speculation, and Luke was like, we want Luke. And I'll be perfectly honest, and I'm going to lay all my cards on the table. I did not want Luke to come find the kid.
Really? I didn't know that. You and I haven't talked about this. This is fresh news.
Yes. I did not want Luke Skywalker to come find the child, to find Grogu. And here's why. I had so many, and I enjoyed the episode that had Ahsoka in it, but I had so many issues getting past the fact that it seemed like they were more focused on Ahsoka than Mando, that I was afraid if they brought in Luke Skywalker, it would steal the show again and we'd lose it. And I honestly, I had some feelings about that during Rebels too, because the whole first season of Rebels, you had a lot of guest people, and you had R2 and 3PO show up. You had Lando. You had I just blanked on Bail Organa show up. I mean, you had all these characters from the movie showing up. It kind of was stealing. It felt like it was stealing the thunder of that. Even in Resistance to me was worse about it, because when they promoted the show, it was all about Team Fireball and their droid Bucket, and next thing you know, we got BB-8 all through season 1, and they replaced BB-8 with CB-24, and it's just you and I was afraid they would, if they brought Luke in, it's gonna steal the show, it's gonna steal the scene, and it's gonna be completely lost, because I kind of figured it would be something, whoever showed up would show up and be a major part of the episode through the whole episode, not show up in the last 10 minutes. But I did not want it to be Luke Skywalker for that reason. Plus, I was afraid if they brought in Luke Skywalker, it never crossed my mind that they would digitally image his face like they did in Rogue One. I was afraid they would recast Luke Skywalker. And Luke is a character that you have to, like I said, he's the face of, he is like the face of Star Wars. Everybody knows who Luke Skywalker is, and I would think recasting such a beloved character, and they did it with Han Solo. I know the arguments, they did it with Solo, and they did it very successfully with Solo. Alden Ehrenreich did a fantastic Han Solo, a younger Han Solo. It was younger than the Solo we'd seen in the movies. So there's a little bit of, I guess you could say, wiggle room in there because of that. But he still played a great Solo. But to recast Luke, I don't know. I would have an issue. I would have more of an issue with them recasting Luke Skywalker than I did with them recasting Han Solo. And I think, especially because, I don't know. I had an issue with it. So Luke was the last person I wanted to see show up in The Mandalorian. Now, with that being said, Luke shows up, and I lose my stinking mind. and now I can't picture it being anybody else. I want it to be Luke. It needed to be Luke. It was perfect for Luke. And I loved how they utilized him in this episode. And you're right. We had not had a chance to even discuss this, David. It was something I had discussed with, I think I discussed it with Robbie, and I discussed it with my boss too, when he called me the day the show aired, was released. And I was like, I couldn't. I was just so enthralled with this Luke. It was great. But no, it was not what I wanted beforehand.
Wow. No, I hear you. And we did talk about this a bit. I mean, we talked about, I think back in the episode where we had Dan Zier on, and it was Ahsoka, and we were talking about this whole thing of having, Bo-Katan, then Ahsoka, and so on. Does it end up overshadowing it? But the way they did this, at the very end, when you see that moment between Grogu and Din, such an emotional interaction, and it shows both of them up close, and it is featuring the Mandalorian, the star of this series, and they have Luke stand there quietly with R2 and lets them have their moment, and they used Luke just perfectly, not too much, not too little, and I wanted to add another name because, Aaron had just mentioned, all the different Jedi that people were theorizing about. And the other one was Mace Windu, that people were talking about a little bit. But ultimately, when you look at this, I think if it was anybody but Luke, I just feel like it wouldn't have had the emotional impact, because I'll just tell people, I've told people from the get-go, Aaron, knows this, and Aaron's heard me say it, I'm a crier. I get teary eyed. I get emotional, and of course, I'm crying when Grogu is touching, Din's face, and then when Din's teary eyed. I was tearing up as I see Luke, coming through and coming to save them, because again, it's right when our heroes are, they're not going to be able to survive. Even Moff Gideon said it. He goes, "Listen, when this is all said and done, all of you are going to be dead except me and the child." And that's the truth, because Bo-Katan, Cosca Reeves, Fennec Shand, Cara Dune's got her big blaster there. Mando, he doesn't have really anything left. They've got a dark saber, but I don't know. Can they wield that thing? Maybe Bo-Katan could, to clear out all those dark troopers. I don't think so. So again, we see Luke save the day. We see our hero doing what we want to see from him, and it just, I'm blown away. I mean, I've seen these clips where they say, "Well, who did it better?" Rogue One, where you see Vader just cutting through all those people, or Luke Skywalker, cutting through these dark sabers. And this is just like, I gotta tell you, just movie quality, from the seeing Slave One and these TIE fighters and these ships in space to this battle. You're like, this is a movie. This isn't your chintzy, low budget sci-fi show. I mean, the whole scene of Luke coming onto that ship and getting all the way to the bridge is just, that's movie quality, isn't it, brother?
Oh, absolutely. It definitely is movie quality. Everything about this show is movie quality.
Yeah.
And you brought up the comparison with Rogue One. It is very much, I mean, you put those scenes side by side, and it's incredible to see how Luke moves like his father did.
Yeah.
And the difference between light and dark, he's slicing up the rebels, he's slicing up droids. And to see some of his moves, I mean, his moves reminded me a lot in that fight, reminded me a lot of Anakin. Not just in Rogue One, but in Revenge of the Sith, when he's going through killing the Separatist Council on Mustafar when he first gets there.
Yeah.
Some of the twists and turns and flicks of the lightsaber reminded me very much of him, and it was just an incredible scene. And for him to do it, and still be in his robe, still have his face hidden, which struck me odd for Luke, because Luke never fought in his robe. He always took his robe off, and it just kind of struck me weird, but he did it, and it was believable, and it was great. It was great action. It was great, and that was the Luke I envisioned post Return of the Jedi.
Right.
Getting on his feet, restoring the Jedi Order. That was the Luke that I saw. And to me, this is great to see. You get to see Luke almost at in his prime. His confidence level is by far superior than anybody would have ever than Return of the Jedi, because he showed up by himself, took on an entire cruiser of dark troopers on his own, completely unscathed, just to get to Grogu.
Yeah.
And seeing and this is where I'm gonna step out here on a ledge, and please y'all don't push me off, but seeing this Luke and where he's at and the confidence and mastery he has makes Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi so much more believable for me.
Oh.
Because that contrast in how high he was on his how how strong, how great, how powerful he was, how confident he was. You know, what's the saying? The harder they fall.
Yeah. Yeah.
and he fell, and he didn't know how to recover from that, and that's what. And to me, this made The Last Jedi so much more believable. Matter of fact, after I watched this episode 3 times the day it came out, I actually went and rewatched The Last Jedi.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And if I recommend doing that, watch this episode, see Luke at his best, because he is literally in his prime. He is at the peak of his strength, and he's he's there. And to see, and I mean, we could probably do a whole episode just on your psychology corner on this particular subject, but David may have to do that later on. But this Luke, the strength and the confidence of this Luke makes the old man who's lost, the old man hiding because of failure, to me, more believable.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this real quickly. So we could do a whole psychology corner on this. Luke's talk with Rey in The Last Jedi, when they're in the temple there by that that symbol in the water, he's just saying, look, I was the legend, Luke Skywalker, and in essence, I start to think about what you're saying. It feels like Luke almost feels like he repeated, what the Jedi of old did. They were in their prime and they got stuck in their ways. And it allowed, and Luke talks about this in The Last Jedi. He talks about Sidious being able to sneak in, and how they're at their height. The greater the fall, right? And he experienced the same thing. Hey, I'm doing great, building the Jedi Temple, and then bad stuff snuck in again. And so I can see why if it's The Last Jedi, to maybe do this a different way. To not always do it the way that the Jedi did it. Can we do something different than attachment, or these restrictions on attachment and so on and so forth? But, wanting to see, and who knows what they'll do, would Rey do it a different way? Because that's what Luke was encouraging her to do. The Great Republic, the Jedi of old fell because of hubris, and Luke experienced the same thing. He repeated it, and then of course that makes it more poignant what Yoda said when he appeared to Luke on Ahch-To. He says, "Look, are we going to learn from our failures or not?" And he's saying, "Luke, you didn't," and I'm telling you again, learn from your failure. And yeah.
Oh, absolutely. The saying that keeps going through my head is, pride goeth before destruction.
Yeah.
In Proverbs 16:18. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. In Luke's life, to me, especially after seeing this, is the perfect example of that.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, wow, that definitely went places I did not expect.
Well, that's okay. No, that's what we could talk about this episode for hours and hours.
Oh, absolutely. We could definitely. So let's go ahead, and we've pretty much discussed everything here. The only other thing I want to touch on before we go into our final thoughts is Mando versus Gideon.
Okay.
That fight between Mando and Gideon. Which was a great fight to me. It was a well choreographed, very intense and fast paced fight. But what really struck me about that was, one, how well Gideon wielded the Darksaber.
Yes.
And two, how it affected the Beskar. And of course, Mando was fighting with the Beskar spear.
Right.
And there were a few scenes where the saber is in contact with that spear for an extended period of time, and it's not cutting through, but you see the Beskar just begin to glow orange because it's getting so heated.
Yeah.
How intense was that?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's what I was thinking about when he hit Mando from behind, when he was about to pick up Grogu. Those were glancing blows, bam, and off his, when Mando had his forearms up and things like that. But yes, absolutely. I noticed that several times when there was continued contact between the Darksaber and that Beskar. You wonder about Ahsoka's lightsaber. She hit Mando several times. Same thing on those. What do we call it around his gauntlets, around his arms, right? Yeah. So when she hit his gauntlets, it wasn't for an extended time, and same thing with Moff Gideon. But yeah, that was impressive. I'd be curious to see if it would ultimately burn through that Beskar spear if it was held there long enough.
Oh, definitely. I'm curious of that too. So to me, it was just a great fight scene, and I wanted to at least throw that out there because I don't think Pedro Pascal was in the armor during that fight. It was probably one of his stunt doubles, but him and Giancarlo Esposito, just a phenomenal fight. I loved it, and he has been a fun villain in this series. I gotta say, he's probably one of my favorite Imperials right now. Looking at the history of the Imperials, he's definitely one of my favorites, right up there with Tarkin. He's not quite Thrawn level yet. Thrawn is to me the ultimate Imperial, but he's right up there with Tarkin for me. So love him. So all right, with that, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up our discussion of chapter 16, The Rescue. David, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with your final thoughts?
Absolutely, brother. Kind of dovetailing back to where Aaron and I were before, talking about, was a Jedi going to respond? I think we all pretty much knew one would. Aaron makes a very strong argument about, who was going to come back. I was hopeful it'd be Luke. I didn't know how they would do it. I was hoping they would do it. I wanted to see Luke. I did think if it was anybody else, it would have fallen flat. Not flat, because Filoni and Favreau wouldn't have let that happen, but just not the punch. Like Aaron mentioned, when you see Red 5 coming in and landing on that light cruiser, and then seeing the slow reveals that it is him. And I'm just so pumped at how they did that. And I'm so thankful it was Luke that was the Jedi to respond to Grogu's call from the Seeing Stone. For a television series, I can't believe how great the effects were for Luke's battle with the Dark Troopers. The sword work was incredible. Coming back around to what Aaron said, the person was absolutely a martial artist who was helping, inside of Mando with that fight with the Beskar spear, and so those fights were incredible. The effects when Luke is literally cutting these Dark Troopers in half, we saw that a couple times, and I guess Aaron helped me out here, knowing that that was Mark Hamill's voice. His voice has changed from when. 1983, obviously, but he is a voice talent. I mean, he's been doing this stuff for years, and so he can do almost anything with his voice. So maybe he really did bring it to that age. I guess I wondered if they did the de-aging technology, used that on his face like they did with Robert Downey Jr. and Sam Jackson in some of the Marvel movies. They did it with Sam Jackson and Captain Marvel, right? We see him look younger. It was incredible how they did that. And then I was trying to remember which Iron Man it was, if it was Iron Man 2 or 3 where they de-aged Robert Downey Jr. But that was incredible to see. I love how they handled it. And just like Aaron and I said, they ultimately handled it in a great way. It was great to see Mando continue his growth as a father figure to Grogu. Love that. Removing his helmet and seeing the tears was priceless. And now, I guess for me, before I give it a grade, there's just more questions, which is good. They're good questions. And again, this keeps us interested in season 3 and beyond. But one question I have: how will Mando and Bo-Katan resolve, quote unquote, the issue of the Darksaber? Will we see Mando meet up with Grogu next season or in a season 4? I think that'll happen. Mando promised that he would see him again. That'd be interesting to see how that could go down. And what will Mando's mission be now that he's completed his mission to return Grogu to one of his kind, meaning a Jedi? Another question: will we see Cara Dune and Rangers of the New Republic? I very much want to see her continue on. I love her action sequences in this episode and all season long. Wish we could have seen more of her. But ultimately, this grade, you and I knew, Aaron, that I knew they had something up their sleeve, and they could definitely do it and have an A+ episode. So this one was A+ from the first time I saw it. No questions asked. A+ and probably multiple pluses. So incredible.
Very good. And just to clarify, it was Mark Hamill doing the voice. It was still the facelift technique they did for Rogue One.
Okay.
Matter of fact, the actor who was actually playing Luke in the show was an actor named, and this is taken from Twitter, Steven Stanton tweeted this out, that the actor who played young Luke in this episode of The Mandalorian was Max Lloyd Jones. So he was the body, but then they digitized Luke's face from Return of the Jedi over it.
Okay.
And then, of course, Mark did the voice.
Outstanding.
So, yeah, I wanted to throw that out there, clarify that. And like I said, that's from Steven Stanton tweeted that out. And I appreciate Steven Stanton doing that. He's a great guy. So final thoughts for me. I enjoyed this episode thoroughly. This was all around, this was a great episode. A lot of fun, a lot of action, a lot of surprises and twists. Very emotional. I mean, it was a very emotional episode with them rescuing Grogu, then of course having to send Grogu choosing to go away with Luke, and Mando taking off his helmet. That scene right there, we hadn't even talked about that. Man, that was such an incredibly powerful scene. And I love the fact he's like, I'll see you again, I promise. It just was such a passionate and emotionally moving scene. And I loved how they did it. Like I said, I did not want Hamill at first to be in it, or Luke Skywalker, the character, I should say, but I loved how they did it. And now I can't imagine it being any other way. I absolutely loved it. This was just a great episode. It does leave a lot of questions unanswered, though. I want to see, I want answers as to how Katan lost the dark saber. Questions as to what happens to Grogu with Luke, and in some of his training. And I think the biggest question I have when it comes to Grogu is, does he leave Luke and come back to the Mando, or does he meet the same fate as the rest of the Jedi when Ben Solo goes cuckoo? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of questions still stirring inside. So I will let that go. So I loved that. It was a great episode. Grade wise for me, it was a great episode. It really was. And I've been teetering back and forth on this literally since I saw it and trying to figure this out. Because initially I had it at an A+, and then the more I watched it, I was like, okay, this was great, but I'm thinking, Twilight of the Apprentice great? It wasn't Twilight of the Apprentice great, but it was still great. So I've been teetering back and forth between an A and an A plus, but overall with the way the episode went, and especially after I rewatched it and then rewatched The Last Jedi and got the new perspective on Luke, it to me that put it over the edge. It's definitely an A plus for me.
All right. No, I was just like, wow, Aaron. I was gonna say, man, I've never heard you be this tough on a grade wise, man. So that better let the listeners know we don't just give this stuff out lightly.
No, it was. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. Even after I rewatched The Last Jedi and made that connection with Luke, I was still at an A. And it wasn't till our discussion tonight that I flipped it to an A plus. I literally had it scored as an A in my head all weekend and even all day today until we recorded. So,
well, remember, Aaron, you and I have the right to channel our inner Tom Gross, the CWK newsman. We can evolve our grades.
Absolutely.
Over the course of you've made arguments in years past with Rebels, with Clone Wars, and we've talked, and you've made some points, and I'm like, gosh, I agree with Aaron. That grade should be lower. And there's times where you've made arguments, I'm like, yeah, my grade should be higher. And that's what's fun. It's fun to hear the different things that we talk about and how it can change in how we view it. In our grades. But Twilight of the Apprentice, oh my gosh, yeah, that's A plus. And you and I almost went back and watched that the other night on Sunday night, but just time wise, I just need to get to bed because Aaron and I are working this week, so I had to get to bed. But that's definitely on my viewing over Christmas break.
Absolutely, it sure is. It should be on everybody's viewing. So let us know what you thought of The Rescue. How would you grade it? What were your thoughts? You can hit it. You can always email those to us, show@starwarsreactions.com. Or, of course, you can always hit us up on any of our social medias, which, of course, would be Star Wars Reactions on Facebook, SW Reactions Pod on Twitter, and SW Reactions on Instagram. So, with that, we are going to take one final break, and when we get back, we will have when we get back, we will have this week's David's Psychology Corner. Carabast! We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. It's Aaron and David here. We are wrapped up our discussion of The Rescue, and we're going to turn it over to David for this week's Psychology Corner. David, take it away.
Thank you, my brother. Yeah, so this was a new segment we did this year. Talked with Aaron about it before the season started, and we just thought it would be something fun for people to listen to. And I really wanted to give a perspective on these issues in Star Wars, particularly Mandalorian and him as a father figure and Grogu as a child figure. I wanted to give a psychological perspective, something different than, what a lot of other shows would give. And so we went ahead and did it, and it's been a blast. And as I've said in previous episodes, this series has made it incredibly easy to talk about psychological underpinnings and psychological issues. Very, very easy because they're all over. So what I thought I would do is briefly review the topics that we covered over the various chapters instead of covering something completely new tonight. I know for me, when I was in college, when I was in grad school, and even all the years since I've been out of grad school, when I read something or learn something, if I need to hear it twice, 3 times, read it 2 or 3 times, hear it 2 or 3 times. If I can really do that, then I've got it and I've learned it. So what I want to do is I thought it would make sense to review those topics. So our listeners, not clients, I listened to our last episode and I several times I call them our clients. No, you're our listeners. That I want them to really be able to take what has been covered so far and really digest it and really learn it. So let's do it. So what I did is over the weekend, took the time to go back, read all the show notes for all of our episodes and all of my psychology corners, and I thought I'd just briefly review them right now for our listeners, and it'll be good to get it in their head a second time, and they'll ultimately become good psychologists, just like my professors always said. Make your clients, make your listeners good psychologists. So here we go. So back, if people remember, in our first episode covering season 2, episode 1, I talked about how refreshing it was to see a parent, especially a father, in a positive light on national TV. And if you go back and listen to how I covered that, you'll hear some of the research that I talked about from Dr. Leonard Sachs, talking about the incredible lack of TV shows showing moms or dads or both in a positive light, in a role where the parents are trustworthy and consistently good parents. So that was already incredibly refreshing from last season and this season. In our second episode, covering season 2, episode 2 of The Mandalorian, I talked about the less glamorous aspects of parenting. This is where, when parents, when you feel sick, tired, run down, in that particular episode, that was the passenger. Mando, it was helping a mother, right, the frog lady, and her babies. When he's cold, he was tired, his ship was wrecked, right? And he just said, hey, let's just sleep this one out. But, we see him step to the plate and start fixing the Razor Crest and stepping up as a dad and doing things when you don't feel good. Little side note, we never saw Grogu get a consequence for eating those eggs. We had talked thinking that perhaps Grogu would have one of those eggs inside of him and would perhaps be able to help Frog Lady and Frog Man with their children. We never saw that. I would say this, that I would have liked to have seen him get a consequence for that. I put a little note in my show notes. Dr. Skinner, B.F. Skinner, was a famous psychologist at Harvard in the 50s, 60s, and 70s and on. Trust me, he would not approve of seeing Grogu eat those and not have some type of consequence. All right, let me move on. In our third episode, covering season 2, episode 3 of The Mandalorian, we talked about Mando's growth in doing discipline. That's when he told him to mind his manners, and he told Baby Yoda, you know what I mean. That's when he was getting ready to go do that, what would we say, I guess, a mission with Bo-Katan and the Mandalorians in that particular episode. I also used that episode to really speak about the very serious subject of not having a father in your life. And I shared some statistics from author Donald Miller's 2006 book, To Own a Dragon, Reflections on Growing Up Without a Father. And I laid out a number of different statistics that were pretty sobering. And if you want to hear those, definitely go back and listen to those. In our fourth episode, we covered season 2, episode 4, and I spoke about all the times Mando was not making good parenting decisions, and that was in the form of taking him into incredibly dangerous situations, as well as the very good decision to not bring him to the Imperial base on Navarro, and that was pretty neat. He got to stay in the classroom. He had the Navarro nummies, or whatever they're called. I think I hear people talking online how expensive they are. I'm trying to remember the company that's making them. But anyways, there was a good decision parenting-wise, keeping the child safe in the classroom there on Navarro, and they had the big adventure destroying the Imperial base. In our fifth episode, covering season 2, episode 5, that's where I had an extensive discussion about PTSD. And I also talked about other disorders that can make parenting very challenging. I also spoke a bit about the criteria for PTSD. I didn't go over all the criteria. It would have taken too long in that particular episode. I also talked about the effects of PTSD in Grogu and also the effects of PTSD on Mando. Little side note, I want to make sure I came back to Grogu here because we did learn, and Aaron, and I don't know if we talked about it enough, but we learned that he was also presenting in the manner he was in the series because he needed to hide his Force abilities. Okay, and it did make me think about Kanan and Rebels, where Kanan is having to hide that he's a rebel, right? And he hides his lightsaber and stuff like that. So just a little side note and maybe a capper on that particular issue of PTSD and Grogu is that maybe it is a combination of him protecting himself and PTSD. Maybe next season we'll, I don't know, like I said, how much we see Grogu, and maybe we see Luke Skywalker talking to Mando again and him sharing Grogu's story of what he actually saw in the temple or not. Maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But I just want to mention that to our listeners that, if he did see Anakin do what he did in episode 3, then we definitely see the PTSD. But also we do know that Ahsoka did talk about him protecting himself by really trying to push down his Force abilities. Okay, moving on to our 6th episode. We covered season 2, episode 6. We covered a subject that no parent wants to face, and that's the loss of a child. And what I tried to do to make the Psychology Corner relevant and helpful to our listeners is to discuss the importance of parents discussing that issue of purpose, and how that is something that I do with every mom and dad who has lost a child, is I reiterate that they're purposeful. And ultimately, it was my hope from that episode that all people know that they're purposeful. So we covered a really, really, perhaps the most difficult subject on the planet there. Last week, in our 7th episode covering season 2, episode 7, there was way too much psychological richness to discuss in the time we had. But Bill Burr's character, Mayfeld, he was really the psychologist who introduced 2 critical psychological subjects in this episode. The first is when he is on the tank transport and he talks about our sense of self. And it really got into this discussion of our true self, or our core self. And I spoke about ACT theory as well as psychological rigidity and flexibility. Again, go back and listen a little bit more if you want more details on that. And I'll talk more about ACT in episodes to come. But I also talked about how it applied to Mando as a father, and how he was going from psychological rigidity to psychological flexibility. The second major subject that Bill Burr's character Mayfeld brought up was really about this issue of ultimate truth, or relativism, or right or wrong, and whether there's evil in the world. And one of the questions I asked last week was, when you look at Valen Hess, that, again, another deliciously evil imperial officer, just like Moff Gideon is deliciously evil, I did ask the question, is there evil in the world? Is there evil in people? And I left it open-ended, and getting our listeners to think about that. But Mayfeld's character really got both of those discussions going. And again, we could probably do 5-6 hours straight on each of those subjects, our core sense of self, as well as the issue of right and wrong. And then in this last episode, we truly see the results of Din's growth as a father over the course of the season. We see from him the safety of Grogu is preeminent in his mind, and no longer is the way preeminent, keeping his helmet on. It's keeping Grogu safe. He took his helmet off last chapter, and he did in this chapter, with Luke and Cara and Fennec Shan and Bo-Katan and Casca all present. And it does allow such a beautiful bonding moment between Din and Grogu. And so, in essence, to combine what we learned from a couple of psychology corners, Din has moved from psychological rigidity to psychological flexibility, and he has learned that the stance of the way, to never take off the helmet in front of another living being, is not an ultimate truth, but rather a relative truth that is seen in different factions of the Mandalorians. So that was really neat to see. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the maturity, growth, and psychological flexibility overall seen in Mando. And we see this when he allows Grogu to go with, in essence, a stranger, a wizard, a Jedi, right? What Mando shows is that he is thinking about what is in the best interest of the child, not himself, but the child. And he listened to Luke, and Luke tells Mando that the child would not be safe until he's fully trained in the Force. He's at risk. And so I thought it was really neat because Mando understands that it is in the best interest of the child to go with Luke. Again, not easy as a parent, but it's in the best interest of the child. And so I just wanted to end by thanking everyone for listening to my Psychology Corners and for the positive feedback regarding the Psychology Corner. And there's more to come. Aaron and I have said that, and people have talked about different subjects to cover. So like I said last week, there's no end to the subjects we can cover. But we have so much more to discuss from a psychological perspective, and we'll do it in seasons to come.
Absolutely, we sure will. And I gotta say, I love your Psychology Corners. I love the recap you did for us tonight. So that was awesome. Thank you so much. And like David said, this will continue. We will continue our Psychological Corners as we proceed on. So let's go ahead and wrap things up. David, if they want to have questions about your Psychological Corner or just want to talk Star Wars with you, how would somebody go about and do that?
Absolutely. Two different ways. It's been really consistent. One is Twitter, and my address there is @David_Motters. Let's see. And and the email. That hasn't changed either. That is david@StarWarsReactions.com.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. And of course, if you do want to talk Star Wars with me, the best way to do that is Twitter at TAHarris121079, or you can email me, Aaron at StarWarsReactions.com as well. Those are the best ways there. Remember to keep following us online, like I mentioned earlier. Our social medias: Facebook, Star Wars Reactions, Twitter, SW Reactions Pod, and Instagram, SW Reactions. We can get all the latest Star Wars news and find out about our what's going on with us there as well. I do want to let everybody know this is our last episode of 2020. We have made it through the year, and we're happy with that. So we're hanging up the hat for the holidays, and we will be back in 2021 with new episodes, and you can look for that first new episode coming, like I said, January. It'll be January 13th, 2021 is when we will release our next episode. So from us here at Star Wars Reactions, we want to wish each and every one of you a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate, happy holidays. Have a safe and happy New Year. We appreciate each and every one of you. We thank you for all the support and for listening in. We pray for y'all daily, and we will continue to pray for y'all while we're on break. And here's to making it through 2020, y'all. So we look forward to seeing y'all next year. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
If you'd like to share your thoughts, you can email us at show@StarWarsReactions.com for our show notes and the latest news from the Star Wars universe. Visit our website at www.StarWarsReactions.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at SWReactionsPod or on Facebook at Star Wars Reactions. If you enjoy our show, please leave a review on iTunes. This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.